Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast with Julie Clark and Joe Bauer, where we share the nuts and bolts of real estate investing from our 20-plus years in the industry. Sit back, relax, listen, and immediately take action. Are you ready? Here we go.
Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Real Estate Investing podcast. My name is Joe Bauer, and I'm here with my co-host, Julie Clark. Julie, how you doing today?
I am doing exceptionally well today, Joe. Thanks for asking. Yeah. You haven't used the word exceptional for a while, so I'm throwing it out there. Yeah, sun is out. Sun's out here in Seattle. Sun's out, guns out, right?
Yeah.
Getting ready for a delightful weekend of snowboarding with my two little knuckle draggers, and looking forward to that. What are you up to?
Heck yeah. I'm hanging out in Corpus Christi, Texas, where they have this amazing national seashore. I'm not sure if you saw, posted a picture yesterday. We did a workout on the beach, and it's just like this amazing place. You can go drive on the beach and camp out there, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Are you taking the van on the beach and doing some donuts and...
The van isn't very good at doing donuts. I've tried to get it to do that, and it's not an exceptional donut machine. But it definitely sticks to the sand. So we are taking it out onto the beach and doing some four-wheeling when necessary. It's fun.
Cool. That sounds like a good time. So where are you off to next?
We're going to head over to San Antonio, and then after that, the fun begins. We're going to go out to Big Bend National Park, and we actually have a trip where we hired a guide, and he's going to take us, it's either kayaking or canoeing up the river, and then we spend the night in this big gorge or canyon, and then head back the next day.
That sounds awesome. Sounds adventurous.
Yeah.
Well, we have an adventure today that with our friend Augustus Bukowski, who is with us. Many of you guys know him in the Seattle area as Augie, which I can't help but that reminds me of a book my girls are reading every time I say your name, but I love it. You stand out, Augie, because I don't know anybody that has the name Augustus and Augie. So there you go. Makes you unique out the gate. How about that? Welcome.
That's great, and you'll know a second one now because we just had Augustus John Bukowski the second.
Oh, awesome! Now, what would you have?
Baby Gus.
What were you going to name her if it was a girl? Did you have a name picked out?
Well, my wife and I had lots of conversations about that, and even while we didn't find out what gender we were having until of course birth. So. We were actually sitting around in the delivery room asking Siri for girl names and talking with the nurses and whatnot. And, I think it would have come down to, we probably would have still given her the name Augusta. And, just firstborn gets the name. No female gender roles. That's there.
Awesome. There you go. Well, congratulations. How old now?
Oh man, he just turned 4 months.
Ooh.
Oh man, sleeping much or?
He's already been a traveler. We took him to Austin, took him to Maui, and probably trying to take him to some more places. And he's been pretty good until this last week. He's been giving us a little bit of a challenge at night, and I think we're getting. We get about 2 hours in between sessions, so it keeps things exciting.
Oh. Man, I remember when my girls were learning to sleep in their own beds, and I have twins, and they, when they were getting out of their cribs, when they figured out how to get out and they were finally in a bed that they could actually get out of, I literally sat at the bottom of my stairs for like 5 hours every night while they just putting them back. Get out, put them back. Get out, put them back. Out. It was welcome to it. It's fun and torture at the same time. So.
Awesome. Well, we're excited. We love having him with the family, and honestly, I just it's my first kid, but I don't think there's any greater joy.
I agree with you there. So let me give a shout out for all of you listening who don't know Augie. He is. I don't want to. What would be your? Well, I'll say top producer at Bay Equity Home Loans. I don't know. We can let you brag on yourself there for a minute. He's also a developer. with his company BK Investment Group, which does builds apartment projects and multifamily projects that they hold long term, as well as Seattle Luxury Homes, which is his arm of his company that builds new construction townhomes and single family homes for sale. So this guy's multi-talented. You might not meet him at the meetups. We were just talking about that. He's over just cranking out his deals and taking care of Augie Jr. in his off time there. But we are so glad to have you today. We see your name all over the place, but looking forward for a little bit of intel on development today and check in on the Seattle scene in regards to that. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I like any opportunity where I get to talk with like-minded individuals about probably my favorite conversation. And,
absolutely.
It's there's only so much my wife will let me talk about real estate, and that's already too much.
Awesome sauce. Well, I'm going to let Joe kick us off with our standard kickoff question so we can get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks for being on the show today, Augie. And the first question is always about getting to know you a little bit better, because I think it's really interesting to figure out how people were kind of molded into who they are today. So if you could step back and let us know, where you grew up, how you grew up, and if there were any influential things in your life that brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I am a Seattle native. I grew up right here in Finney Ridge. And, my parents had bought our property up on the ridge back in 1984 when I was born. And back then, Finney Ridge was kind of like the high crime fixer-up neighborhood. And so they found a discounted property for about $84,000 right on Palatine, which is probably the best street in Finney Ridge. It's on the view side, one block off Greenwood. And, growing up there was great, very family-oriented neighborhood. I didn't know any difference that was good or bad, right? I was like a baby. But basically, kind of over the years, Finney Ridge really grew rapidly. Got really nice. Couple house flippers actually on this would buy houses on our street and kind of buy them and convert them into rentals. And I remember getting interested in that in my middle school years and actually talking to them a little bit about what they were doing. And then, kind of moving into, yeah, well, I mean, just because they, it's like in Finney Ridge, like if you're outside, you like talk to everybody. Like if you don't talk to the people that walk down the street, like you're rude. And so everybody would kind of like check in and see what's up. But yeah, so then in junior high, I got even more interested in investing, not necessarily in real estate. My school did a program where they had broke up the class into different teams in sixth grade. And then they gave us our hypothetical investment portfolio and then had like a competition to see who could make the most money. That was, of course, during the .com boom. And, not knowing anything about anything, we just invested a lot in like AOL and stuff that was like, kids thought was cool. And I think our portfolio went up something stupid, like 600% or something. And then we actually won an award for like the best investors, right? That they had to stand up in the auditorium and like gave us our little certificates. So
wow, what school was that?
It was St. John Elementary right on 80th and Greenwood.
Well, that's where my kids go. Yeah,
oh, really?
Yeah, I love it. We're St. John peeps. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. And we have more in common than we even thought. We were neighbors, and your kids go to the same school I went to.
That's right. I'm glad to hear that. Did you go to Blanchette after that?
Briefly.
Right. Okay, we'll keep going. We'll hear the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, if they would have checked in with me a year later when the .com bubble crashed, I probably would have been bankrupt, right? In sixth grade. But anyway, it gave me the interest, right? I was like, okay, so there's this opportunity out there where people can take their money and then without actually doing like physical work or really any work, you can make that money, make more money. And so that concept really stuck. And I went off to college over at WSU. Go Cougs. And
oh my God, I'm a Coug too. Here we go. We're like siblings here. We're like the mirror image of each other.
We're basically the same person, right? We're doppelgangers.
That's right.
So over in Pullman, I was never a studious guy. I don't know. It seems like that seemed to be a trend, but never a studious guy. But I did get into finance, and finance was kind of my saving grace. I took all the finances classes, graduated with a finance degree. I was really good student in math and science. If it was English or anything else, I passed. So my idea was that after college, I would go to Wall Street or work for like WAMU. Back when WAMU was a bank for you younger guys. And I graduated in 2008 with a finance degree, and that was bad. I couldn't even get an $11 an hour bookkeeping job. So I was out of college, sitting in my parents' living room on the couch, playing video games, and my parents are like, "You have to get a job." And I was like, "All right, well, I want to do finance." So I tried the financial advisor route, got burned out of trying to push whole life insurance on people because I didn't believe in the product, and also the returns and their mutual funds were low. I was like, "Why are we looking at 8%? I want to get like 20%." And so I was like, I'll do, the financial collapse was pretty bad. So I'll just do mortgage because it's still in finance. It's not what I want to do, but it's still in finance. So I got into mortgage in 2008. And that was right when all the banks were closing. No one could get money. Subprime was gone. And I was like, seems easy to me. There's this thing called FHA. And basically you just have to be alive and have a job and we'll give you money. So I learned the old school FHA rules, and we were pumping out FHA deals left and right at 6%, 30-year fix, and people were knocking down our doors to get it. And then rates tanked over the next like 2 years, all the way down to 3.25% was the lowest rate I ever sold on a 30-year fixed.
Wow.
And I believe that was 2000. I remember it vividly. I was driving over the pass to pick up our puppy Henry, and a senior vice president of a local company here had called me, and they're like, "Hey, I'm shopping with like 10 different lenders. What's your rate?" And I was just like, "Look, man, I don't care who you are. If you lock right now today, it's 3.25%, paying a 1% of your charges, but you have to say yes now and send me all your documentation within the next hour." He said yes, sent me all his documentation. We closed it. Since then, rates ticked all the way back up to where we are today, which is closer to like the low 4s. So, over the years, though, go ahead.
Still so great. Yeah.
Yeah. And then over the years, we just kind of, I decided to focus more and more on mortgage. And, I opened my own branch down in Lower Queen Anne, where I still am today. And, just kind of grew that business into purchase business, helping investors kind of structure portfolios of properties, kind of like the house hacking type stuff. And I didn't know it was called house hacking until this year. And then, when I would get a rich person, right? Because, I don't usually get rich clients, right? Usually it's more first time home buyers or, people who maybe have a house, but every once in a while you get lucky and you get somebody who's got like, multiple properties, lots of income generating properties, businesses, et cetera. And being on the mortgage side, we get to look through all their tax returns and ask them as many questions as we want. And so that gave me the unique opportunity to say, hey, these people who don't necessarily have the same financial knowledge that I have were able to go out, buy properties, generate millions of dollars of portfolio of assets, and live off of the income. That's pretty cool. I want to try that. And
wow.
So I had saved up a little bit of money from 2008 to 2013, and I decided to get active. And a lot of people typically say, hey, why don't you try like flipping a house or buying a rental? But, I was like, why would I do that? I see the guys who are making money are building stuff. And so I hopped right into building townhouses.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah.
And you haven't looked back.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, it's just so, I know nothing of construction. I do now. I can do a little bit of construction, right? Management. I still can't swing a hammer. I can switch out an outlet, and I can switch out a light switch. I'm pretty good at that after my recent renovation. But outside of that, I leave it to the pros.
Well, what was the first deal that you did then?
Yeah, so it was great. It was 2000, I started looking at properties in 2012. So the market was still depressed, but coming out of it. And I had found a lot that had been sitting on the market. And this is the thing that blows everybody's mind. So, it's a great point. Everybody asks me, where do you find all your deals? How are you connected? How are you getting this? Everything outside of one transaction I bought off the MLS.
Wow, so, even to this day.
Even to this day, I just, and they're all crazy profitable. So I found the site, and it was 2 townhouse lots that had already been subdivided. It had gone into foreclosure, and I was buying it from the bank, right? And it was 2 lots for $85,000. And I just sat there sitting in my chair, like staring at it every month for 6 months while it was on the market. And I was like, this has to be a deal. This just has to be a deal. And, I randomly got a call from a client looking for money, and he was a builder. He couldn't get financing. And so I was like, hey, I can't get you any loans, but will you take a look at this lot with me? And he's like, sure. And then a 3-hour conversation ensued. And then we were at the lawyer's office that afternoon, starting our first company, BK Investment Group. And, within 30 days, we were under contract on the lot and getting permitting for our first 2 townhouses.
So are you guys still partners today?
We are still partners, and it's actually, it's very hard finding a good partner, but we're still good buddies. We hang out, we talk all the time, and it's we work for and then take it from there, see what's next.
So
but yeah, it's great.
Is a builder or like a builder by trade?
Yeah, my partner's a builder.
Okay.
Builder by trade. So we're both relatively, I guess we're getting towards middle aged. I'm 34, he's 36. And so same kind of time in life. He had kids a little bit earlier. He's got four little kids that are great. And now we're starting our horde. But basically, it just aligned, and we had the exact same goals. So like I look back to our operating statement from when we set up our investment, and it's hilarious. It's like, we wrote out the outline, the mission statement, if you will. And it's like, generate as much wealth as possible while taking zero to limited risk. And so basically everything we look at, we're like, okay, we have to make sure a couple variables hold true if we're going to do it. One, we can pull 100% of our cash out within a year of completing construction. So that way we have $0 invested. And then 2, once we pull that cash out, we have to make sure that we would be able to withstand a 25% drop in rental income. And then 3, we also have to make sure that we'd be able to stand a 25% drop in market values, so we would be able to liquidate the asset and not have to go into foreclosure. And, we both kind of agreed to that. And, obviously our profit metrics for our transactions have to be extremely high in order to hit that goal. And so we don't buy a lot of stuff. We're not out there, trying to buy 100 properties. We sit and wait patiently. And when we see something that somebody passed on that's a home run, we buy it.
And how do you feel that is there something on how you structure your deals or your knowledge of finance that gives you an edge? I mean, I would just, is that you don't find the MLS these days to be super competitive, and do you have some special sauce knowledge that gives you some insight?
Yeah, it's always competitive. So I feel like even if you're looking off market or, dealing with wholesalers or whoever, you're going to have some competition, right? And so the only thing that I tell every single client and investors is it all boils down to the numbers. I don't care where the source comes from. I just want to make sure that there is enough room to increase value, that I'm going to be able to make sure I hit those metrics. Like, the 25, once I'm completed, I'll have at least 25% equity. I'll have enough income to weather a 25% drop in rent. And you could look over 1 million deals. If you find one that meets those metrics, it's a home run. So it's about the metrics of the transaction, sticking to it, and then, just making sure that you don't compromise. I found myself throughout 2018 wanting to compromise, right? I would be constantly handed deals, like people were trying to sell property for ungodly amounts. And, I felt like a failure, because I was like, I can't buy anything, and my business is predicated on me buying, especially with development. The development cycle for a project is like, 3-4 years, right? And so I was like, I have to buy to get the pipeline juiced up. And, in 2018, we only bought one property, and so it's about the metrics and not forcing it, which is another reason why I tell all my clients, and I believe Adrian Chu hit on this on your podcast, is if you have a day job, keep it, because you're going to use that income from that day job to leverage your opportunity. And like you said, the special sauce is leverage. If you have the ability to access capital, particularly conventional capital, you're going to make a whole lot more money in a whole lot safer way. Hard money is inherently more risky. It's a lot more cost. A lot of people out there are building apartment buildings and townhouses using hard money funds. And usually they're paying around, let's say 10 to 12%. They have a little bit of skin in the game. The loans are only for, 12 months if they're lucky. Lots of fees up front. Where we're getting our construction financing closer to, 6.5% interest only, only 15% down, maybe 1 point on it. And it's fixed. And a lot of times we do the apartment stuff where it is a one-time close, where we do the construction. And then once the building is complete, it wraps up into like a 5-year product. So,
I was going to ask you about how you're structuring your deals. Like, what is like you say, you're not using hard money. How does that work? I think people who aren't familiar with finance might think like, well, how do you get a conventional loan on a, construction project? Or, I think the laymen think that a conventional loan means, you're going to live in there or something like that. Tell us, for all people listening, about the financing side that you're able to achieve. What is it?
So I think that's a really good point. So like, a lot of first-time home buyers or first-time investors, like they get so caught up in like getting the absolute best deal on something, right? So they're like, I need to get something for under market, or, I need to get closing costs paid, or it's not a good deal, or I have to get that, 4.5% conventional rate that I'm chasing, right? But when I'm talking about conventional financing, I'm just talking about financing that's either like a commercial loan or, residential conventional loan. And I really don't focus on getting the best transaction. I'm in the business and I never have gotten the best transaction once. So I can tell you that's the least of my concern. Typically what I'm looking for is I'm looking to work with partners who are going to accomplish the goal. So if I'm working with a commercial bank, I want to know that the commercial lender is going to perform. I want to know the metrics of their loan, what kind of parameters they'll work in. And then once I get the funds, I want to know that they're going to give me the capital. That was one of the things that really tanked builders back in the day, was they would get their construction lines frozen and then they couldn't complete the project, right? So I wanted to build relationships with those individuals. But yeah, so, for individuals who are buying like their first house or duplex or fourplex or whatever, you have options available for you if you are going to live in the property. One would be like the Fannie Mae home style loan. You can do a renovation on the property, make it nicer, maybe buy something that is not financeable on a regular Fannie Mae Freddie Mac loan. But it is eligible on their renovation loan. So maybe it's a distressed property that just needs a little bit of work. Alternatively, if you don't have really good credit, you can also look at possibly doing like an FHA 203K transaction, which is a government version of a renovation loan. Same kind of parameters, low down payment, buy a house that's a little bit distressed, You can do some renovation. You can't do like a lot of, add-ons or anything, but you can, buy a nice big property. And that's one thing that we'll look at, is a nice big property that you can, really make the space nice. And then you have a really good home, and you've financed it with cheap interest rates.
Yep. Do you, and then keep going. So, I mean, for development deals, like what would be a typical deal, how you would structure it? Do you ever seller financing on any of your deals, or, I don't know.
No. So, I mean, the tough thing, well, yes, we did. Okay. So I'll tell you, I guess the craziest story about how financing worked would just be like the first 3 deals in a row. So like, so here it is 2013, and we bought this 2 townhouse site, and, I had $60,000. All right. So I had more than some people are going to have starting, but not like I was not a millionaire. Right. I had $60,000 that I had saved over, 4 or 5 years in the business, being quite successful. And, the lot for the townhouses was $85,000. So I didn't quite have enough, but it was also land. And, back then you couldn't really finance land anywhere aside from hard money. So what I did is I took a $25,000 cash advance on my credit card and then put that together with my $60,000 and bought the land. Right.
Yep.
And then, so I'm sitting there in my office scratching my head, because I now have like negative $25,000, because I have the credit card debt, and I've never built anything. And all of a sudden I find another property that is, a great opportunity. It was a $525,000 triplex next door to Children's Hospital down in Windermere.
Yep.
And, this person, this is the only off-market property I've ever bought. This person brought it to me, and they're like, "Hey, we got this great property. Will you take a look at it?" I thought they just wanted me to value it for them. And I told them, "Yeah, man, it's worth $650. I'd love to buy something like that." And they're like, "Well, that's why we're bringing it to you." At that time, I had no money. I had negative $25,000. So I was pacing around in my office, scratching my head, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? So I then went out to, some private lenders that I had spoken with and I knew, and I was like, "Hey, I just bought this property for $85,000 free and clear. I got it permitted, so it must be worth more than what we bought it for. And, we're going to start construction. Will you give me $100,000 or $125,000 secured against the land and this triplex I'm going to buy?" They said yes. And so then I took that $125,000, and because it was a secured loan against an asset, it was eligible for down payment on the new property. So I ended up buying that triplex by Children's Hospital with zero down. I used, hard money as a down payment and bought the property with a conventional loan. So that's awesome, right? Yeah. Here's the beauty. The property that I bought it for $525. I thought it was worth $650. It appraised for $750. So I had an instant massive equity gain. I then went to a local credit union, got a HELOC, because conventional financing, in order to pull any cash out, you have to have 6 months pass to use the new appraised value. Otherwise, it goes off the acquisition price. But a lot of local credit unions don't do that. So I went to one of the local credit unions, got a HELOC on the property I just bought with zero down, and I got myself $150,000. I used that $150,000 to add a 4th unit to that triplex. Now 6 months has passed. I refinanced the HELOC and the initial loan into one new conventional loan. But guess what I do then? Now it's worth like $895. I go get another HELOC, renovate the other 3 units. So now we're all up to snuff. $0 invested, and I have a 4-plex next to Children's Hospital generating $9,500 a month in rental income. So I have that whole project. I still have $0 invested, and I'm making, I don't know, like $3,000 a month rental income above and beyond my mortgage payment. And the thing's got just a ton of equity. Meanwhile, I'm finishing up my my townhouses, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, well, crap. Here's another property that I forgot I even put an offer on because it was a short sale. And the agent's calling me, telling me the short sale went through. I'm like, crap, I got to buy another house. And So I bought this. I bought another property. Again, conventional financing. I had maybe like $25,000, and so I did a 85% LTV conventional purchase loan. And a lot of people balk at those because the interest rate's so high. I think if I were to equate it today, like maybe the interest rate for a single family home investment property with perfect everything with 25% down might be like 4.875 or 4.99. So if you want to do 85%, it would probably be closer to like 5.875%, and you would pay PMI. And so it almost never makes sense. But it makes sense to me because I can get 30-year fixed debt on this development site. And yes, I'm going to pay a little bit more for it, but that's just the cost of doing the project. So I held that property, rented it out for about a year and a half while getting permits to build an 8-unit apartment complex, and only had to put in like $27,000. So it was killer. The beauty again is because we know the conventional financing side is we had bought that property. And, we bought it for such a good value because it was a short sale that once 6 months passed, I then refinanced and got a $184K loan. So it's actually negative $45,000 invested. I had already gotten all my capital plus $45,000, and it's a development lot. So, we use the power of conventional leverage, not concerned about interest rate, right? Because, if we go on to Zillow.com and find the absolute cheapest rate from Provident or something like that, that bank's not going to do these loans, right? So instead, we use conventional lenders who would work with us to get these properties, make sure it went through. And, we put together a portfolio of like 5 properties off of the same, basically $85,000.
That's insane. What's the underlying theme here for everybody that's listening is the financing. I mean, you've got to become and be, educated in finance, right? I think it's Greg Pinio, who's somebody I've been introduced to recently, that said something like, real estate is the clothes that finance wears. I think that's one of his sayings. So want to make sure I say that clearly. Is where I think I heard that from. But I find it interesting, all this investor stuff and all these investor courses and all this, and you don't really hear anybody ever talking about finance they talk about hard money. They don't talk about how, traditional financing, can be used to grow your portfolio or anything else. I think it's all backwards. It's been bugging me for like a year and a half that everybody focuses on their education in real estate almost in a backwards way,
I totally agree. First, I want to say I love that quote. I heard it the other day when Neely was interviewing with Jan, and I was like, "That's one of the best things I've ever heard." The financing quote that you did, and you're right. Most people look at the.
I want to say that's not mine. I think I got it from Greg Pinio, who I met recently. So I just want to make sure that's clear. But yeah, it just makes you go, "Holy crap!" I mean, everything's so backwards.
Everybody looks at, it's the same thing about how people get looking at real estate. They'll start online, they'll look at a fancy house, they say, I want to buy that. They'll go to you, Julie, and then you'll be like, well, what do you qualify for? And they're like, wait, I have to do a qualification? And then they get sent to me, right? And so it's financing should be the very first thing you look at. And then, once you know what the financing looks like, then you can find the deal that matches the finance. I actually have a very smart client right now who was doing his first real investment property. He's funny. He's always like, well, I have an investment property, but it was just a dumb luck investment property. I'm like, okay, cool. I love you. And so he's looking at a property, finds out what his financing is, right? And he's like, my metrics are, I want to make sure that when I buy this property, I'm going to generate at least $1,000 of cash flow with $0 invested. And I'm like, that's pretty ambitious in this market in King Pierce, Snohomish County, right? And he goes out and finds it.
I think it's because, that people get focused. It's, if you, like you said, if you learn where you fit in, the very first thing somebody needs to do is, keep their job, like we talked about, so they can qualify for financing, go out, and rather than learn how to flip a house or what things cost or whatever, go fully understand your capacity as a borrower, right? Meet with Augie, guys. Go sit down and meet what is your exact situation and what can you do? Like, where's your bandwidth? And then all you got to do is understand how to match your bandwidth with whatever you're going to focus on going to buy, and learning maybe some creative real estate and, you know, seller financing and, you know, things like that along with it as a boost if it comes up that you're able to have that conversation. But, you know, I think it's interesting that the real estate investing world doesn't seem to work that way. I'd like to, you know, get with some of our friends like yourself and Adrian and Albert Bowie and, you know, and even, you know, like somebody like Mark Canton, tax guy, and create like a panel and almost a coaching situation where people can learn the right way from the start. It's very frustrating. I'm the first to say I'm not an expert, but you know, Adrian, right? I mentioned Adrian because you guys both were middle school, you know, guys in middle school.
All the people you mentioned too, I talk with occasionally. So,
exactly. Yeah.
And you're so right, because I feel like that when people kind of get into real estate investing, they immediately go for like hard money renovation, you know, really risky propositions. And if you're doing that on your first transaction, it's really scary, because what I think we'll see over the next 6 months is a lot of people who jumped in and didn't quite know the ARVs, didn't quite calculate for a slight pullback. And when they go to try to cash out their hard money loans, they're going to be, you know, in a tough spot. Right.
Well, it's already happening, you know, absolutely. That's already happening. Right. So
I see it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's current present thing. It's interesting, you know, that people go and they start investing and they, you know, I always tell people, I don't think you should do it on your own. People should partner up from the beginning.
Yeah.
Get a few deals under their belt. They also go and they buy deals from whoever's selling it to them, and they don't get any second opinion on value. They just listen to what the person has told them it's worth, and they, you know, I'm kind of in the market of trying to assist the new investors, right? I'd say, you know, there's, you know, different levels of investors, and, you know, there's the experienced big ballers, and then there's the masses of people who are just getting started and want to do a deal here or two or three. And, you know, those are the people that I like to try and help, you know.
And it's so interesting because, like, you know, the goal that everybody has, right? Or I'm not sure if it's everybody, but I assume is like they see the lifestyle of the real estate investor and they say, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be able to have freedom. I want to be able to do what I want and have passive income, right? And they go out and do a strategy that doesn't actually do that. So, you know, you go out and you flip a property and sell it, you're going to have ordinary income. I would say that if anyone's out there flipping houses right now, if you flip 3 houses, you're probably going to, you know, make as much as if you just had a regular day job, right? Except for a lot more risk and stress. And then you know, you look at it alternatively, and I call it like the dumb man's investing is, let's assume there's zero appreciation at all over the next 30 years. Okay. So if you buy something for $1 today, it's worth $1 in 30 years. So I did this example for this guy who found this property. Let's say he found a 4-plex for $500,000, and he was able to buy that property with as little as 5% down using like a Home Possible Freddie Mac conventional loan product on a 30-year fixed. So he buys that property with a very limited investment, you know, and he lives in it for a year. Then he buys another one for $500,000. Then lives in that one for a year. Lives in another one for $500,000. Then does it one more time. So he has 4 4-plexes that he bought for $500,000 a piece. That gives him $2 million of capital. Now let's assume over the next 30 years there's zero increase in value. He still has that $2 million of capital, except for instead of having, you know, a bank loan of 95% against each one, he owns them all free and clear. And he didn't pay for it. The renters paid for all of it. Right. So without doing anything, he's accomplished the goal that he initially wanted. He has $2 million let's say each property generates $4,000 a month, $1,000 a unit, right? That's pretty reasonable in this market. He's got $16,000 of rental passive income coming in every month. He's got $2 million of assets. And if he just kept his regular day job and invested as well, he doesn't even need to dip back into that asset pool to have money to spend. And that strategy doesn't take a lot of risk. It just takes finding a right property and a very limited risk in the down payment, right, of 5% or so. And patience, only buy the houses that meet the metrics. And if you do that, you don't have to be crazy smart. You don't have to be crazy risky. You don't have to be the best builder in the world. And you can be a multimillionaire with passive income.
I know, but then you can't post on social media how many deals you do and how many, you know what I mean? It's like people
right.
so caught up in the, thinking they got to do a lot of deals or whatever, but, real estate's a long-term sport,
Yeah.
I don't think
and let me tell you, the people that think they want that have no idea. When you're doing a ton of deals, when you're doing what I'm doing and my partner are doing, you don't have the work-life balance that you want. Okay. So when we're out there, I think right now we have, we have a 27 unit, development, in Northgate, a 20 unit in, Crown Hill. We're working on a 50 unit in Greenwood and another 16 unit in Ballard. That's a lot of units. And that is on top of what we already own. I have a beautiful 20 unit apartment complex in Green Lake that we built. And the management, the team, the acquisition, the financing structure, plus your day job, of the mortgages, right now I'd say that we're working probably about 60 hours a week. And, my biggest goal as doing that dream of hey, look at all the projects I do, right? It's not as cool as it seemed like before I did it.
Right. What's your favorite part about the process, though? What is the part that you enjoy the most?
Oh my gosh, putting the deal together. It's still the happiest moment of my life. I find something that every other person out there passed on, and I just sit at my desk with a little smirk on my face, and my wife's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "No one's bought this property for 60 days." And she's like, "Well, you better get on it." And I'm like, "Okay, fine, I'll buy it." And a good example of that was a property that we have on the market right now. It was just crazy. So it had sat on the market for 30 days. And I started looking at it at day 10 because it was past the offer review time. And this was back in 2017. And so the market was still very hot, right? And it was 3 townhouses that were all 1,800 square feet, 3 bed, 2.5 bath in Georgetown for $400,000. Meanwhile, Georgetown's blowing up. Right. Townhouses are selling for $600,000 to $700,000, and I'm just like, you got to be kidding me! Someone's gonna buy it. So I just kept looking at it every day. I just pulled up every day, and I was like, look at that. That's amazing.
Why do you think nobody bought that? Nobody went after that. I saw that project that you're talking about. I saw that you have it. Why do you think it sat there? And what did you see differently?
Well, what I saw differently is I think that people get kind of a little bit wrapped up. So if you look at our portfolio, right, we do townhouses, we do single family houses, we do apartments, we're looking at hotels, we look at commercial property, right? We look at flips if they make sense. We look at major renovations, and it's just the metrics. So people get caught up a lot in what they're trying to do. Like if you're doing flips, you might not consider an apartment rehab, right? But it's really the same thing. And so you just want to look at the metrics, right? And so this property was, first off, it was marketed as a triplex. And what's funny about that is you can't actually finance that conventionally as a triplex because each property is on its individual tax parcel. So that's a no-no. But if you had the foresight in the financing, you could say, okay, I'll just write 3 purchase and sale contracts, and then I can finance each one individually as their own purchase. Okay. So I think that alone eliminated a lot of buyers because maybe they called their lender. Their lender's like, you can't do that.
On the finance side of things, right?
Mm-hmm. And then another thing is a lot of people are some people are timid to negotiate, right? Even though everything's negotiable. And so I was like, 400's a good deal, right? But it'd be a better deal. It's how about 360? And so thing had been sitting on the market for 30 days. I come in, told the agent, hey, I'll buy these all for 360, I'll represent myself or whatever. And, he's like, let me see. Went back to the seller. Seller said 380. I said, fine, let's split it at 370. So here I am. I've just negotiated a deal to buy 3 1,800 square foot townhouses in Georgetown for 370 a piece, all of which are rented for $2,000 a month. So I'm getting cash flow right out the door, right? And so I'm sitting there, call my commercial lender. I'm like, hey, man, you won't believe what I just got. Will you give me a cross-collateralized loan against all these interest only so I can just make money over the next 12 months? So I cross-collateralize it. I'm making like $2,000 a month because I'm paying interest only. All of them are worth $450, so I have $70K equity in every one the day I buy it. I hold it for a year, so that way it's a long-term capital gains, right? And then we pop in, dump about 60,000 to each one, and we just got our first one pending at 625.
Nice.
So what's cool about that is while everybody out there was hunting for townhouse lots to build, we just bought townhouses. We didn't even have to build them.
Right. Do you ever do it? Do you ever do any type of like slice and dice financing where I guess you kind of just did that, right? Is that what we talked about? You just cross collateralize. That's kind of the opposite of what I mean. Like, taking something that you would normally put $1 million note on and break it up into 10 parts or something like that.
Yeah. So it all just depends. And so, like I said earlier, like a lot of people focus on like what's the absolute best rate you could get. So like if I had financed each one of those as a, conventional 30-year fixed mortgage, single family loan, with a residential lender, I probably would have gotten, an interest rate around 4.75% or something like that. But I did a cross-collateralized commercial interest-only loan at like 5.25%. So I paid 0.5% more in interest, but I didn't care because I was generating cash flow while holding the asset, and I already had the equity to do it, and it was an easier process. Additionally, because it's a commercial loan, it's not sitting on my books. So if I want to go finance something residentially, I don't have those 3 residential loans sitting against me.
Right. Well, I was going to jump into development for a minute with you.
Yeah, sure.
So when you're looking at a development opportunity, let's just say that you found, what is like the first quick filter analysis that you use on your deals? Do you, what's your go-to first couple things that you do? You have check zoning, look at the lot size, look at the lot dimensions, what do you do?
So I'd say, and again, it's all going to depend on your municipality. So almost everything that my partner and I do on the development side is in the core, like, maybe C, B grade areas of Seattle, which are, few and far between. So it's like right on the edge of like, Green Lake, or right on the edge of Ballard, right? So like these areas that aren't quite A paper, but pretty darn close. And all you really need to do to be a master of the initial feasibility is simply find a property that is zoned correctly. So you need to learn your zoning. Seattle zoning is very easy. Typically, you're looking at LR1 through LR3. A lot of times, if you're a mid-sized or townhouse guy going to bigger development, maybe you look at some NC zone properties or commercial zone properties. And then Seattle went ahead and made these really usable PDFs that show you exactly what you can build and where. And if you just Google, I don't even have it saved, which is silly. And so every time I look up my standards, I Google Seattle multifamily zoning chart. So everyone who just heard that, that's all you have to do is Google Seattle multifamily zoning chart, and it will pull up exactly what you can build in each area and how you can develop it. Now, what you do is once you find that lot and you're like, okay, I got a 5,000 square foot lot. It's in the urban village. The chart tells me I can build 2 times the lot size. So I can build a 10,000 square foot building. I'm going to start my due diligence there. If it looks like it works, maybe I'll tie up the property in a feasibility study. Typically we try to do feasibility as of 30 days or more. Take that time to because I'm not an expert of the code. And so then I'll take it to an architect or maybe a engineer, and I'll say, hey, confirm what I'm looking at, make sure that my massing study, a massing study is the amount of units you can put on the property. Make sure my massing is correct, make sure I'm not missing anything. And if that looks good, then, maybe you do a little session with the city. You find out if there's any issues that they have with it. It's called an intake meeting. And then, how
long does it take to get an appointment for an intake meeting? What's the deal on that?
That's not that long. Like, we can usually get intake meetings within 2 weeks. And so that's why we kind of set that 30-day feasibility window. The two things that are
your earnest money due and payable upon acceptance of the feasibility contingency?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So we do go hard. We go hard once we've cleared our feasibility.
Do you wait for a PAR, or something, some official thing from the city?
Yeah, so a lot of developers kind of went crazy and just bought properties over the last year, which made it really difficult for us to buy.
I know. I hear guys in Ballard, because I live in Ballard, right? We live in Ballard area, that they're like 2-week feasibility. They don't, if it's infill stuff, there's, that's it.
So
they just buy them.
The things you have to worry about if you go in fast and, people are going to lose their shorts on is, especially in this market with the values dropping a little bit, is that there's some very expensive street improvement plans and utility extensions with these development projects. Mm-hmm. And if you don't factor that in, you could lose all of your profit. So we were looking at a property that was a 2-townhouse site, just a little guy, so super easy from a development standpoint. But we looked in, we were getting going, went and talked with the water guys, and there was going to have to be about a 200-foot water main extension.
Right.
So that would have been, worst case maybe $200,000, best case $150,000. Well, that's a lot of additional cost, and at the end of the day, that ate up about half of the projected profit from the transaction. So you really have to, in your feasibility time, make sure you look into that. And then the other thing is, like you mentioned, a PAR, where you're going to see if the city's going to require you to do any sort of street improvement, and that could be a whole nother nightmare, right? So
yeah.
So it is really important, like anyone who's excited.
Can you get a PAR in 30 days? Or
so this is how we structure that. So no seller, as everybody knows, wants a feasibility longer than 30 days, right? So what we do is we write up our contract where we say we're going to do a 30-day feasibility. However, seller to agree to up to 3 extensions of 14 days apiece until the PAR is received.
Okay.
That way we can articulate.
If they won't agree to that, then that's not the deal for you.
Correct.
Is that it?
So that way we're articulating, look, we're fine with a 30-day feasibility. And if the city cooperates, we're good to go. We'll buy it. We're good to go. Yeah. But the problem is with how much development's been going on with all the recent changes down at SDCI, it is taking 45 days to get these PARs. And we don't want to hold you for that 45 days, but we're going to need to get that PAR back before we proceed, because I can't give you the value I'm giving for your property if I'm going to have a monster $150,000 bill, right? And I'll even explain it. If a lot of times we'll say, if the PAR comes back negative, we are willing to split the cost of the anticipated cost and still buy at our price.
Okay. Yeah.
So, everything's negotiation.
Get a $200,000 water extension bill, and you're going to split it?
Yeah, sure.
If it works, if your numbers are all still there, right? Yeah.
If your numbers are rough, so like typically on most of our projects, we're trying to mitigate and not really do projects that have those types of improvements anyway.
Right.
So, we would have to have a pretty sizable gain worked in to do that. So like, if it were like a 5-townhouse site, that would make sense still to split it. Or if it was like a large apartment site, that would still make sense to split it. because you are going to have to do some utility work and you are likely going to have to do some street improvement, right? So some of that's already built into your pro forma on your feasibility. And so, even though you're splitting the cost of it, like you already have some cost factored in.
Exactly. Are you guys, what type of earnest money are having on a 4 or 5 unit townhouse site? What kind of earnest money is?
This might be shocking, but we're getting away with like $25K.
Wow. Yeah.
And we did have a site. It was a UW mid-rise site where we were going to build a 96 unit apartment complex, and I think we did a $85,000 earnest money with $65,000 non-refundable after waiver of feasibility.
Nice. Craziness. So do you do a soils test? What else do you do during you get your PAR, you talk to the city during your 30 days, do you do a soils test or?
What we do is we'll really focus on, so obviously with all of our construction, we have our subcontractor fees pretty dialed in, right? Yeah. A very baseline thing is like if you've done enough projects or your general contractor has, they know how much the cost to build is. And so, you could do it as simple as saying, I'm building a 1,000 square foot property. My cost is $200 a foot. So it's going to cost $200,000 to build, right? So we'll do our cost analysis. We do a little bit more detailed than that because there's a lot more that goes into the multifamily development. But we'll do our cost analysis, and then we'll look heavily on rents and the movement of rentals on various websites like Zillow or Craigslist. And then our strategy with a lot of our multifamily stuff is for the apartment side is, what is the cheapest rent on the market, and can we build a luxury product, so granite, tile, triple pane windows, crown molding, nice product. Can we build a product where we can get that lowest rental market rate and still be profitable, right? If we can get that, we'll do a further rent study to see what we anticipate rents being, right? And based on the product finish that we have. But if we know that we can still break even at that lowest rent, well, someone's going to rent our product versus the old, beat up 70s apartment, right?
Right.
So we do that. And then with regards to the townhouses, we'll do the same thing. We'll look at the lowest sale townhouses.
Break-even analysis is, let me take the lowest rent for some old school thing, and can I break even? That's one of your benchmarks, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we with regards to our design and finish level, like we typically do relatively high end. Like if you look at our properties versus our competitors' properties for the same space, our property is going to have a lot more high end finish. And the reason why we did that is we do believe that the market will be overbuilt on apartments. And when there is an oversupply, why will a consumer choose our apartment versus a competitor? Even if we had the same price. And so we wanted to make sure that our units were feature rich, in that there would be no way someone would choose an alternative apartment if it just came down to price or within $100.
Right. What's the story on parking these days? Is that parking? Parking drives the deals, right?
Seattle hates cars. And, the problem that we see with a lot of the multifamily stuff, to be honest, is that the prices of the dirt right now in relation to the project itself is there's only really a finite mix of units that actually work. So one is typically, you can't really do parking and have small apartment buildings pencil. Really almost the only thing that pencils is units under 600 square feet, or small 2 bedrooms or small 3 bedrooms. And so, you really have to look at, the market absorption rate for this product. So, a lot of people were out there doing CDUs or micro housing.
Yep.
And, we were going to do one micro housing project right on the corner of East Lake and Harvard that we actually sold fully permitted. And, we saw that the micro housing market seemed to have a lot of inventory on the market. People were actually renting them for much lower than what people were estimating. And I do know that that market is strong. People are still renting micros, but we decided as a company to liquidate our entire micro housing portfolio of developments right before people started kind of losing faith in some of the apartment development.
Right. Yeah. How do you feel like we've had apartments are different than townhouses and single family. With the market adjustment that we've recently we don't know what's going on now. It seems like it's picking up a bit, but the last 6 months for sure, we've all felt like an adjustment, we'll say, in the market. Has that impacted what you're doing or your projects, or what do you feel about your townhouse and new construction projects? Not your multifamily is different, right? Because that's a whole different.
Absolutely. And so, it all comes down to the metrics, right? So like, townhouse projects or single family houses, those projects are usually under 2 years. Apartment projects are usually, 3 to 4 years. And so, if you're not factoring in, when we look at townhouse values or house values, kind of like the lowest valuation possible, you are going to get into trouble. And then while you're doing your development construction, staying actively engaged.
Out to everybody, I want to say that when you're doing your underwriting, you are planning for your break even, right? Basically.
Correct.
Right. So,
but even beyond that, I'm planning for a minimum profit. So I never want to put $1 into anything if I'm not going to get that $1 back.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, this is kind of crazy, but our first 3 deals I told you about, aside from the townhouses, our gross profit was $1 million on each one. Wow. So one project, 1 million, because we were so tight and conservative on the profit metrics that we're like, we're not going to buy anything. We're just going to buy, home runs. So I don't even want to, I consider time as a loss, right? So if I'm going to put, 100 hours this year of my life into a particular project, I want to make sure I'm compensated for that. And so we look at not only a break even on project, but a break even on our time that we put into the project.
Right. Would you, let me ask you, there's some upzoning going on around in Seattle, such as like Crown Hill and these places. Would you ever buy a project and actually close on it in an anticipated upzone situation where it hasn't actually officially hit the books yet as the new upzone? Would you do that? Or
it's funny you should ask. So a lot of people are also tying up projects waiting to close on the upzone. And because we're super conservative, me and my partner had chosen not to do any of the MHA products or any of that. But, like with those Georgetown townhouses, there was one that was just bugging me. It was sitting on the market for about 90 days. And it was a 6,000 square foot SFR lot that was going to go to a LR2. And because of where this particular property was located, I didn't think it would be affected by the amendments going in on the FHA here last minute.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it wasn't. Just because, if you look how the city does their zoning and they want the neighborhoods to transition, this one was in one of the transition zones where you would have it be LR2. That would be a whole nother talk. But basically, this property, it was a 5-bed, 2-bath, 2,200 square foot single family house remodeled on a 6,000 square foot lot in Crown Hill for $650. So I bought it because it was worth more than $650. It appraised for $725. So I bought it because it was an undervalued asset. So I had already protected my investment. It had the upside of becoming LR2, at which point it's probably closer to 900,000, right? So quick, instant upside if it does pass. But at $650, I can, possibly add a mother-in-law unit to the basement, or possibly add
it pencils without it.
Yeah, it penciled out as, even tear it down and build a new house. Like the darn thing, if a deal's a deal, you buy it. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have no excuse for not buying it if it has multiple exit strategies. So I ended up buying it. I already got it rented for, my mortgage payment. I did conventional financing. My mortgage payment is $3,050. And I'm renting it for $34.49. So I'm going to make $400 a month and possibly have, $200,000 of upside. Pretty good investment. So yes, I bought one, but that was the only one. And I only bought it because I felt like I'd be missing out and wouldn't be able to tell people how smart I was if I didn't buy it. And it did pass.
Well, what do you see going forward? As we're projecting forward here in 2019, give us your prediction of what's going to happen with the market, or, what about, are you interested in any type of opportunity zone stuff? Are you looking at that kind? I don't know if you saw our most recent podcast with Joe Allis. That was a pretty good one.
That's awesome.
But are you into that sort of stuff?
I love how that guy just broke it down, because it was like, this is exactly how you do it. And he did it so well and from such a smart, educated standpoint that I was like, I don't even need to go read on it. He just told me exactly what to do. Right. And so literally after you guys had that podcast, I put an offer in on a property where I could put a 40-unit apartment in the opportunity zone.
Look at that. Hey, well, I mean, we'll say we contributed a little bit, right? Somehow we contributed to that.
Yeah. So, the market, I think it's actually going to get good for developers. Obviously with this up zone, there's so many people out there who have been investing in the MHA properties already, or possibly tying up MHA properties, right? And I think that the majority of the people that have done that are looking to liquidate them as multifamily land versus develop them. Mm-hmm. And even if they do develop them, they're looking to liquidate instead of construct. So I believe what will happen is we're already seeing, and I don't know if you've seen this on your end, Julie, but the amount of fully entitled permitted projects hitting the market or being shopped wholesale right now is higher than I've ever seen in the last 5 years. Someone brings me a townhouse entitled site or a permitted apartment site or, CD site weekly. That never happened before.
You know what I'm seeing? I think I'm seeing, though, is that for everybody that had projects, that like builders that had projects that completed in the last 6 months and they ended up having to go on the market during that time, or had a few, bunch of projects on their plate, I think that they are waiting to get their current projects off their plate before jumping to new projects. So you might be, in a window of opportunity to grab a bunch of deals if you're comfortable with where things sit, right? Because I think I'm, I don't know that I'm seeing some of the townhouse projects as far as the listed units, maybe in Greenwood and stuff, kind of sit more than you would think, making builders have a little bit of a pause to just clear their books before they jump on all this new stuff, right? Like I said, so if there might be a pocket of opportunity there.
You also have to remember that. You also have to remember that a lot of the builders are just builders, right? So they're not actively engaged in like the hunting down the multifamily zone properties, the working through the permits, the designing.
Right.
So a lot of that's done for the builders. And, just because they're builders doesn't mean they're rich. Like they do make a lot of money, but it's also very capital intensive doing a big project. Like if we're going to do one apartment project that's 20 units, it's going to take $500,000 of capital. So, not a lot of these smaller builders who are doing a lot of this work are syndicating and bringing in money from other people. They're doing their own capital. So not only are they waiting because they want to offload their books, they also just don't have the ability to buy. So I think that will also play into kind of my thought process is once MHA does pass, which I think will pass. I'll go on record as saying that. And when it does pass, all these people who have bought MHA properties or have them tied up will kind of flood the market, and it will be an opportunity where they find that there's not as many builders excited out there to buy because the market's down. There's a lot of competition to sell. And so I think the early adopters to the notion that they should liquidate will start selling these at reasonable prices to builders like myself who are buying. At which point, there's going to be a good opportunity to get back in there and possibly do some more multifamily apartment stuff that we haven't been able to over the last year, or possibly, get some good townhouse sites, right? So I do think there's going to be a buying opportunity. I don't think it will be right when it passes. I think people will come to the market, expecting to sell a LR3 lot for like $1 million, and then they'll realize that the market has shifted. And I think Adrian talked about it. Dirt is easily 20% cheaper now, or should be. And so, once everybody realizes they're not selling, it will be kind of a quick dash to see who can liquidate their properties before they either fall out of contract or, the values get pushed too far down.
Agreed. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll start wrapping up here. So for the, people run across properties all the time, just, new investors, middle of the road, people come across deals, right? Who knows how people find deals? They hear about them, they whatever. For those that think they might have something on their hands on like a infill site for some reason, what's kind of a loose, is if possible, let's say it's a standard site and there isn't a big, it's pretty straight over tackle, no big connection 200 feet away, no real issues with the site. Back in the day, I used to think, builders will pay about 30% of the, gross exit value for the dirt. Maybe that's 25 to 40% in some cases, because that's pretty crazy. Right. Is there, like if you have 4 units that all sell for $850 when they're completed, can you pay $850 for the dirt? Do you have any type of, I'm not talking about if there's extra issues involved with, connections. Like that. What's a little mini piece of information you can share with the average Joe if they come across something that they might get their antenna up to then give you a call, hopefully run it by you. But do you have any info?
Yeah. So I would say that, the metric that I would use if you want to do a quick pencil and paper, what a builder's willing to pay for something right now, is you're going to have to factor in a little bit of risk into their profit. And so what I would do is I would take that starting price of $850. So you can do it for any town. I'm assuming we're talking about townhouse lots, right? Yeah. So if you're at $850 per townhouse for exit price, you go ahead and back out the sales cost of 8%, assuming they're using a traditional agent, then subtract about $125,000 for profit. Then, depending on the unit size, let's say it's a 1,500 square foot townhouse, just assume $200 a square foot, so it's going to cost them $300,000 to build that property. That's going to give you like a rough absolute maximum that they would be able to pay for it. So in that particular example, if they're going to get 850 exit value, it's going to cost them $300,000 to build. They could pay all the way up to maybe $350. I think that would be a little bit crazy in this market, but also, there's most of the townhouse sites aren't getting 850, right? So, it's a very specific example, but I'm thinking that they'll probably want about 125 per door if there's 4 of them. If there are 3 or less townhouses, you're probably going to want to give them 150 per door of profit. And, what we're actively out there targeting for kind of like the cheapest we can kind of get lots right now is about 150,000 per lot. And that's really where we're kind of looking at doing townhouse projects personally, because that's going to give us the most highest use of return and kind of factor in if the market goes down another 10%, we're still going to be able to liquidate.
Awesome sauce. Well, what if somebody comes across the deal and they say, hey, I'm going to call that guy Augie and run it past him, and how can they reach you?
Yeah.
Or would you, I assume you like those calls.
I love them. All they have to do is if they Google Augustus Bukowski, there's literally like pages of contact information from my mortgage business. and you can just email me your project, and I'll gladly take a look, because we look at I think I look at, I don't know, hundreds of projects every year, right? So I look at every single project that passes my desk, and every once in a while, if I like it and you approach it correctly, I'll even give you a couple pointers on it, like, hey, this is what my thought would be. It's outside of my area, but you might be able to do this.
Do you, as far as like if somebody bring you a deal and maybe they're not a builder or an expert at that kind of thing, but they have money, let's say they have funds, do you ever would you ever partner with an investor that can contribute at least some equity to the deal as well as bring a deal?
Yes. So we are actually currently looking at our first joint venture. But typically, if we're going to look at a joint venture, we're looking at stuff that's probably going to be 40 units or more. And mostly apartment sites or mixed use. And we're happy to take a look at those types of opportunities. There's a lot of people out in Seattle who own a lot of good property in grade A locations, and they don't know quite what to do with it, or even if they tried to figure out what to do with it, they wouldn't be able to execute on the project. And we absolutely want to be involved. We have a good, strong track record of developing and building multifamily properties. And they've typically hit some of the highest dollar per square foot sales and rental incomes for their given markets. And so we're always looking for people who have big projects who might want to joint venture or get involved with us.
Do you guys buy any value add apartment deals or existing stuff, or do you stick to trying to do the development?
Absolutely. I mean, value adds even easier. So yes. Yeah. So we will buy anything where the metrics work. So multifamily, we love old, dirty multifamily. It doesn't have to be in an A+ location. We bought a 6-unit apartment building underneath the freeway last year, put about $40,000 into it. We bought it for $1.1 million, put $40K into it, and sold it for $1.69. So we'll do value add. Personally, I think I said that we wanted to get to about 500 doors. So if we get a good, nice property that we can manage over the long run, we are looking to add doors. Perfect.
Well, good stuff, guys. You hear it from the one and only today, Mr. Augustus Bukowski. How about that? It's awesome. I want all you guys who are listening that, you're not going to be jack of all trades, right? Do what you love. Do what you have a passion about. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. But one of the smartest things that you can do is know who to call when you come across an opportunity. So just as important as building your own portfolio and pursuing what it is, if you like to flip. But you're going to come across a deal at some point that's going to be outside your expertise. So one of the best things you can do is have a list of people that are your go-to resource for any type of situation. So I think Augie fits into that role for a lot of us. And you guys should take advantage of that. Anybody can do anything if they know the right people and are surrounded by the right people to help them. So definitely put his name on your list of VIPs. And I'm sure he'll be happy to talk to you guys if you come across anything, easygoing guy here. And we appreciate you being on the podcast today. I am crossing over the 12 o'clock mark where I'm supposed to be in our weekly meetup. So I'm going to have to wrap this up now, but it's been awesome. And maybe I'll see you over in North Beach, or we can grab lunch sometime. I'd love to talk to you some more offline, but thank you so much for coming on today, Augie. And Joe, how does everybody find the details of this one?
Yeah, absolutely. People can find all of the show notes at seattleinvestorsclub.com/67. That's seattleinvestorsclub.com/67. And make sure that you hit the subscribe button. It's totally free. If you have a review, we'd love to hear from you on that as well.
Awesome sauce. I actually might have a deal or two to throw your way, Augie, as we wrap this up. So maybe I'll be giving you a call soon myself.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for having me, guys, and feel free to reach out.
All right. Thank you so much. Over and out, everybody. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Seattle Investors Club podcast. If you have questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, shoot us an email at info@seattleinvestorsclub.com. Now go out, take that action, and build that real estate business. Thanks for listening.